Welcome, everybody. We're going to start the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meeting on Tuesday, June 10th at 6:30 p.m. And we will start with a call to order and then move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. So all rise. I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one division, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we have the roll call, and Jerry, if you wouldn't mind.
Ayers, here. Brisbane, absent. Weaver,
Here.
Tice,
Here.
Reardon, absent.
Thank you. And we will start with an open forum, so if anyone in our audience would care to come up to the podium, state your name and address, and share with us your thoughts, you're welcome to do so. And not seeing anyone approach, we're going to move on to approval of the previous meeting minutes, which happened on March 11th, 2025. If we have any adjustments, please say so. Otherwise, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion has passed. Next item up is the Breezy Point Resort, and we're going to have David Landecker come to the podium and share with us a review of the redesign of the traditional golf course.
I'll be right back with you. Actually, if I could ask you to vacate your seats and maybe come sit back in the audience, because I'm going to project up on the screen behind you.
We can do that. I'll bring mine in case I need to.
We're going to be entertained. That's right.
And I do know that we have people that will be watching the video that were expressing interest in seeing this update. So even though there's not anyone in the audience, we do have people that are waiting for the video.
It's on. There it comes. All right. I'm David Landecker, 7374 Fairway Lane, Breezy Point, Minnesota, representing Breezy Point Resort in White Birch. We're here tonight to share some exciting news with you and kind of give you an introduction to some changes that we're hoping to make at the resort and put a huge investment into the community. Not that we don't always do that, but this is really a spectacular event that's occurring here that I'll share with you. There's 3 different topics that we're going to go through, and we'll just kind of go through them each individually, and if you have questions, I'll probably just pause between topics, and then if you have questions on a specific one, we can do that. But the purpose of us being here tonight is to sort of share with you what's coming next, because we'll be making applications and then actually having public hearings. So just sort of to give you an idea of what is to come. And then to sort of make sure that rumors that might be flying around, or if somebody asks you a question, you'll be educated as to what kind of is going on, what our plans are. And you know, just to kind of, you know, pass that on. So with that, we'll just, the information that we're going to give you is all evolving. So while the things that we're going to show you look like we're heading down a specific path. Things could change, and items might, might change a little bit as we move forward based on some of the meetings that we have. We're having a public meeting with the neighborhood tomorrow. And so we're excited to present sort of the same information to them. With that, we'll just move ahead. So first thing I just wanted to share with you is that the projects that we're looking at doing are within the resort golf course areas, and they're the red resort commercial zoning. So that's sort of what that slide is. So we can go to the next one. And then the first topic we're going to talk about is the White Birch Golf Course up by Antlers, hole number 8 and 9. So these are the holes that currently 8 travels up along the east side of some lots, and then 9 crosses along the old road that used to be there. And I've been talking to Jerry about what types of things we probably will need in order to move this forward in getting permits for grading and to move the fairways around, as well as rezoning. So over on the left-hand side, I'm just kind of going through, or it's going to require a zoning change. The piece in the middle where the fairways are going to be relocated is currently R4, and that was set aside for housing. In order to move things around, it will likely cause us to create a new plat, and we'll see pictures of that as we move forward here of what that might look like. Within the outlot for housing, there was a variety of 20-foot drainage and utility easements that, as part of the platting process, we will, ask the city to vacate those as well. And then ultimately, we'll be requesting the grading and getting a stormwater pollution prevention plan to do the actual construction. And the goal is we'd like to believe that we'll be in construction this fall and have most of the mass grading done this fall, and then kind of fine tune it in the spring and seed it so that it can be played, sometime after that. So go next slide. So next slide is just sort of a reiteration of what was shown on the other slide, except it's sitting on the county GIS system. You can kind of see the lots broken out. The Osceola Circle is next to us. There's 2 duplexes that are facing that fairway 8 that's there now. However, if you were to go there, they're not like focused on the golf course. At least I don't believe. They're just kind of a nice setting where they're at. But, and then this is the kind of, again, the area that's in red would be ultimately would go to zone back to R4, and the area that's circled in blue there would be the commercial. We would change to a resort commercial. It's currently R4. So here's kind of on the left is the existing plat that's of record. You can see Outlet C, which is the R4 property, and all the easements that are kind of going through it. And then on the right is what the plat ultimately would look like when it's completed. Outlet A, which would be converted into the R4, so we're just kind of moving Outlet C over to the orange site, and then what's left over would be Outlet B, and we would, through the magic of the county, tie those pin numbers together so that they would always be golf course. The lots down on Osceola Circle, that's 1, 2, 3. We're not sure if that's going to happen, but I want to show them in the event that the golf course changes enough that there's the possibility that that could happen. But right now, we're just, again, it's in the design mode, so we're not exactly sure, but I wanted to share with you what things could look like. Go back to, you don't have to go back to it, but are there any questions on that particular?
Just silly question, what do you gain changing those 2 holes
gain. Well, the gain is sort of consolidating the R4 into one piece. And if you've played those, and you probably have, 9 is a little complicated, but what's really complicated for us is to get to Outlot C right now. With the golf course, the way it's arranged right now, Bob and I have been scratching, well, before that, my dad and Bob have been scratching their heads for decades trying to figure out how to get to that Outlot C without doing something that would significantly be hindrance to the golf course or, cause a significant maintenance event. Bridges or tunnels and things like that. And so it's sort of like, if we could just move things around, it would ultimately be better. From a golfer's perspective, I'll let Eric speak to that. I think there's an advantage of how you play golf.
Yeah, certainly the 2 new proposed holes that they're looking at for 8 and 9 finish that a lot better, and with the golf shop guys, the head pros and all that have been there forever wanting to switch 9s around so that this ends this way. The last hole would end next to the clubhouse, whereas now it ends all the way across the street and all the way down there, and you have to drive all the way back. So more of a environment, everyone gathering around to see the finish backwards at. So.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. It's not very far, right?
No, you just can't watch people finish on the 18th green without everybody standing there.
Right.
So.
All right, so now we're gonna go to the traditional golf course, which is right here in town, and then we're gonna go to the west side of County Road 4. So the fairways that are up above that are numbered 2, 3, 4, 5, and then in the teens over there, we're gonna just go over there. So in this particular instance, we're gonna be shortening all of the fairways so that they're par 3s. And it'll be sort of, and again, I'll let Eric explain that after we go through it, what the significance about that is and how from a golfer's perspective, it creates some uniqueness to our resort golf packages, etc. And in this instance, what you're gonna see is there's no permits that are gonna be required here. We're just moving some tee boxes and doing a little bit of shaping maybe on some bunkers and things, but beyond that, it's we think it's better for the community, for the golf neighborhood, because a lot of the par 4s and longer shots that have dog legs, balls end up in people's houses, windows, knocking siding and whatnot, and we get a lot of people frustrated with that, and so we think by doing this, that will also eliminate a lot of that kind of activity. So we'll just go to the next slide, next 2 slides, I think. Just showing you how you can sort of see on the lower side where the fairway is relatively long, and we're just going to shorten everything up, and the land in between that we're leaving will just become, sort of on mode fescue, correct?
Yeah. Natural areas, hopefully butterfly habitats and such, ways that we can bring more of the conservationist, environmental friendly things to it. Hopefully taking where the cart paths start with the holes, down the center of the holes instead of right in the backyards of the people who are currently there. So trying to create less of a noise hazard or noise issue with all the neighbors who live along those golf courses, and more of a direct green to tee box.
So no housing, no significant construction, just tee boxes, moving some tee boxes around. And then on the other side of the road, you can see sort of again some of the activity there, a few movements there.
Same thing with that one, the hole on the far upper left over there, that's one of our leading ones where when people are teeing off, they're automatically pulling into the houses and all the netting and everything that's there. By shifting that, not only does it help that entire area in terms of cluster and clutter, but much less damage to the surrounding homes and ease of transition from that hole to the next.
So now we're going to talk about the next event, and that's, we've got a few pictures of poster boards that we had prepared. They'll go along with the slides, but so this is the one that'll, it's gonna take a little bit more activity to get done. So the plan here is, and again, I'll let Eric explain the theme behind what we're gonna do golf-wise, but you can go, I think you can go to the next slide. This shows you the, again, county GIS map of what's existing out there. You can see that, and then this is sort of explains to you what the process is. So the property is all zone R, resort commercial, RC. The building of the new golf course doesn't require any specific special rezoning or permitting. But then when we get into, we're looking at building a social club, clubhouse, and then ancillary uses that will go along with that, which will then bring us into a conditional use permitting process. So now we'll be coming, knocking on your door for public hearings. The social club footprint that you're seeing up there, and we'll show you some more pictures of it closer up, but that is about a 15,000 square foot area. It's not how big the building is, but it's an area that there's a lot of activity going in on. There's a lighted, the golf course will have lighting so that you can play on them the shoulder time in the evenings. Not all night, but we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we'll be doing parking. So the lights will be for parking, building areas. We'll be utilizing timers and downward lighting so that at night, after things shut down and we're not golfing, the lights will go off automatically, you know, and so that they're not going to be on all night long. We're looking at 120 parking stalls, which include 72 for our seating, as is required in the ordinance, and 7 handicap, 7 employee, 34 golf patrons, plus we've got an overflow area that will remain at the existing clubhouse that's there now. Eventually that clubhouse will not be there, the building itself, but for today, it'll be there while we're going through construction and making these changes, but the parking will remain. Even after that building has been removed, the parking will remain. Another part of the plan is you'll see there's a cart barn, which is, you know, in the neighborhood of 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. There's cart paths that connect everything up. We'll have an access drive off of County Road 11 at the intersection of Dove. And I'm coordinating with the highway department right now. I've had meetings with them to make sure, you know, things will line up and be to their satisfaction. And we haven't, and they seem to be fine with what's going on, and they're studying that. So we will need, again, an MPCA stormwater management permit as part of the process. No platting, no zoning changes, just more geared towards construction. We'll have to figure out the route for public sewer. There's a couple of different options to get to sewer it, so those are all being looked at and studied right now. So I'm going to let Eric just explain to you kind of the dynamics of, you know, what's so great about this, because it's, from a golfer's perspective, I think it's a very unique.
So the two main things that we wanted to do with the land that we had here was, one, give a nod to the history and tradition of the traditional course and all the players and everybody over the decades who have come here since the beginning of the resort. We wanted to preserve as much of that as we could. So we thought about the best way to do that was to turn it into sort of an educational experience, and the best way to tie educational of the past into today's golfers and today's golf history was to connect it to all the greatest designs from all the greatest architects that have existed around the world and their designs that they've brought over here. Most of those confined to private-only courses. People like Seth Rayner and such that have been, you know, tied to Augusta National and all the places that the public golfer would never get to play. We took a lot of their, we call them templates, or they're called templates in golf, a lot of their greatest hole designs, pulled them all together in one plot and hired Andy Staples to come in and give us a golf design that he would build that will tie all of that in. And our goal for the golfer as they're experiencing this course is one, that it'll be fast and fun, two, that it ties in all the greatest designs from around the world that you would normally have to travel all over and pay thousands of dollars to play, but you can play them here in Minnesota, which is unique. And three, to, you know, basically let everybody experience a top tier facility like what we have over at Deacon's Lodge over there, with history boards explaining where the templates came from, as well as historical notes on the development of the resort over the decades from when it began to where it is now. We think that's a great way of holding on to the legacy that's been built throughout time here in Breezy Point, and also, you know, educating every golfer who comes through on where these holes came from, why they're so special, and where the best ones were done. We hope with Andy's help we'll have the best example of each of those holes, but it's a pretty stellar project that will be a one-of-one project, not just in Minnesota, but in the Midwest as well.
Any questions?
So you come off at Dove?
Yeah,
And
well,
it curves and then it goes.
yeah, there'll be a site plan, we'll get a little bit,
Yeah, I was just gonna keep.
zero in on that. Yeah, so right now, this is the Golf Architects, Andy Staples' view of the golf course, and so Eric and I have been laying out how the parking and roads and things work, and so this is sort of a overview of what that'll be. We'll come off of Dove and we'll angle, curve down, and then have a sort of a little roundabout, which will be a place for us to drop people off, and then they can come in and park, or if they're ready to park, they can park right away before they get to the roundabout. So it'll kind of be how it is. The parking area is designed for about 120 spaces, and should be more than sufficient for our needs, but if there is a time where we need more, it can go up above. But quite frankly, there's so many people now at the resort that are staying at the resort that are using our shuttle service, that they leave their vehicles parked at their units, and so there really aren't a lot of cars going around. But if you've been to Deacon's and Antlers, rarely will you see them full.
We wanted to show it as a largest case scenario so that when people were looking at it and thinking if it was gonna be big, it's not big, and it actually leaves a lot of that land as natural land that will allow it to be as such, so we don't feel like we get into anybody's yards or
Like number 17 green there, what's that going to be?
So 17 green as it is right now will likely be maintained just because the cost of maintaining greens is pretty high.
Yeah.
It's something that foreseeably could be used as a practice facility for the juniors.
Oh,
We always have high schools asking us if there's a place where kids can practice, and we really don't have that. The course that's being developed across the way with all the short par threes will be one that will be great for families and kids.
yeah.
But Mark Johnson's always looking for places that he can take kids out to chip out of bunkers and chip like
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
And so it has the capacity for sure to be used as a practice green or a high school's junior
Yeah, cause it looks like
facility.
a lot of dirt there not being.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's to let it be as natural and all that for the community down there. a nice open parkland so you don't have people right in your yards, but
Yeah,
there's always the need for areas where people can practice, especially kids, so.
yeah.
And then we've got he's got a cart path that runs all the way through again to connect to the old clubhouse area parking. That little diagonal, square up there, that's the cart barn that we mentioned,
Oh, okay.
where they'd be storing golf carts after hours or seasonally.
Cart path,
There's the barn on the right.
the cart barn
Yeah, right there.
and then it angles up to the current clubhouse right here.
There's city sewer in the clubhouse now? I have no idea.
Yeah, they actually, there is city sewer. It is served, the actual main line is down the hill in front of the condominiums
Mm,
and then comes down the street. Well, it actually is flowing, back towards the marina, and there's the big pump station
oh,
by the marina. So everything is flowing to the north. But there's a sewer connection that goes down from the existing clubhouse to serve that. And I'm not sure it's a possibility that might serve, but, there's several different options, and we just need to try to figure out what is the best, and most reasonable for this. I think that's a little bit of a stretch to take this building and get to it. I think we might end up putting in like a grinder pump like we did up at the Vista project, where we just pump it
yeah.
to a manhole. So, but that's all yet to be determined, so, but we will be hooking that up to city sewer, yes. And we'll likely put in a well. This is just a kind of a blow up of that same area. So the tennis courts disappear, the social clubhouse ends up in that, kind of in that spot.
Just south of where those courts are right now.
And then if you look at the picture here, you'll see that, in front of where the tennis court is, that'll be an island pond with an island in the middle of it.
Oh, so you
So you play
tee off of there and try and hit the island?
Yep.
Well, that's your goal, Roger.
The goal is a lot smaller than the impact.
I bet it is.
Do you anticipate any usage changes with these changes, making it a par three? Do you still foresee having, the tournaments and the same type of clientele using it, or do you see any alterations to that?
There would definitely be a change in that there aren't a lot of tournaments that work on par three courses. Par three courses are intended for speed. We will still have tournaments out there, it's just a little bit more challenging to lay them out. For the first year, we anticipate maybe one tournament because we know the desire to play is gonna be through the roof, so trying to get everybody the chance to play instead of blocking off days is.
So that could also be perceived as a benefit to homeowners in the area, just because it's probably a different type of play that's an activity.
Very, very different. It's much more casual. It's much more, people come through, play, hang out. The whole idea of the social club perspective is to just make it a park, but that's still a golf course. So that, not a intensive 4.5, 5 hour experience, but more of a, come socialize with friends, family. Hopefully, giving more to the junior golfer and the people who are just getting into the game.
That's why you're going with the 12 holes, or just the way they fit?
12, you want to give, value is always something in golf. You want to give people as much of an opportunity without it being jam-packed.
Right.
One of the things the architect is very key on, and he says it all the time, is scale. It's important to him that people be able to take full swings without ever putting anybody else in danger. Being able to play a hole out to its existence without crossing over others, as you often do in side-by-side holes on golf course. So he made sure not to put too many holes in anywhere, to just leave it open so people could play their own game all the way through.
So that's also probably a benefit, just the safety and security for not just the homeowners around there and balls in their yard, but for the people actually playing on the course.
One of the most important things that Andy focused on, I know we're gonna touch on the lights, but one of the things that he focused on with everything is directing every shot away from traffic, directing every shot away from homes, from the yards, from everything. So that if anyone ends up close, it's because they hit a terrible shot. So, by doing that, safety was definitely paramount, as well as, you know, not just for the homeowners and all that, but for the people playing on the course as well. And then the two boards that David put down here, lower down here, are the planned front of the clubhouse on the left over there, and then the planned back of the clubhouse on the right over here. As you can see, there are multiple elevated decks so that there's lots of different viewing levels, different viewing settings. You can see in the photo on the right, the far left of it, there's a golfer teeing off of the stage towards the island green. So the stage is right there. And then this is the upper deck of the clubhouse right here, playing to this hole. Currently, the hole as it sits is right on the road, and he wanted to move it back 30 yards off the road to take away that element too, so.
Those, the architect stuff is, I think, comes up next. The
Okay.
Different plans and, so that's just sort of the, again, the footprint there. When I mentioned that there was about 15,000 square feet it takes in, there's a little cart barn there for, you know, use during the days that, you know, operational, and then, we've got a food truck in there, we can talk about food and beverages.
Cart barn, food truck, space for multiple if it ever turned into that, or for, you know, groups to gather out here. This would all be artificial turf, so a seating area overlooking the course with raised decking over there, and then front access from the cart barn to the people going off the first hole. They'll play around and come back. Hole 6 will finish right over here. Hole 7 will go off here and come back to the cart barn at 18. So it's 2 6-hole loops off the
Hey, there's. That's the upper level, right? Or is that lower?
The upper,
Yeah.
It's upper level.
Because the
Front
tee
of the
box is up
clubhouse,
there.
right here, upper deck. And then
the box for one.
This is the entry. You can see the cart barn to the right.
Happy Days.
That's not about me happy.
It's not about anybody in this room.
it's not about either of the days in this room.
No, it's actually, just a preliminary name, as out of respect for our general manager for 60-plus years.
Oh, wow.
Dave Radloff.
That's sweet. So is this going to be, I know there's like a little drink there, is there going to be a bar, food inside, or is it more the food truck? What's the vision for that?
Bar would be inside, the golf shop is inside over here, the bar is inside there, but it's primarily a social club geared for summer, trying to get people to sit outside. We've got a covered patio, I don't know if that's on here, but a covered patio on the other side, down here. So covered seating down here, it's 4 seasons, so we can control the air and all that on it. It's also mosquito protected, one of the few places that would be. And then, yeah, obviously the concept, if this is developed as is to provide as many levels of covered seating, but also different environments for if you want to sit out in the sun, if you want to sit on the deck, if you want to overlook the course or whatever. But yeah, there'd be a bar on the inside, bar area on the inside. That's the different angle here to show you, you know, just kind of the fire pit setup and the tables and chairs. The golf course is all here, so it plays well away from the clubhouse, but as they come off, they interact with all the different areas, and then with the whole courtyard geared around, you know, the fireplaces in the wall with a big screen TV so people can watch what, you know, All-Star game or whatever's on at the time. Can you go back to that one, Dave?
I don't know.
The back arrow?
Oh,
Yep, tap it once. So as you can see, they pulled this out over here just to provide more covering for that. So even though this is open, some open deck space out here, it's still covered. Obviously, if, weather isn't great, there won't be people out golfing anyway, so they won't be out there, but we're counting on 100 days of beautiful weather in 2027.
2027?
Eric,
So-
talk about the timing of all of this.
Timing wise, we have golf packages booked throughout the end of this year, so we're trying not to interfere with any of them. And the architect that we're bringing in has designed a couple top 100 golf courses, and his calendar is packed. So what worked for him was to fit into March, April, May designing phase for us in 2026. It then takes approximately 6 months for the grass to grow in the way that you want it to in the year that you put it in, with reseeding early in the spring, March, potentially April still of 2027, with the hopes that by the very first weekend of June or even Memorial Day weekend, we would be able to have play out there. That's for the full grow in of grass.
when we start construction?
Construction for all of the clubhouse and the course and all that probably would be very early in 2026.
The changes for White Birch, would those happen earlier?
So a lot of what's going on with White Birch is clearing trees and leveling the ground, and it doesn't interfere with any of the play that's out there because we're using a plot of land that isn't touched. So we have more flexibility. Nothing is set. It's something to do with the construction crews and when they can do it. But it is much more convenient for us in that aspect because they can do it anytime. So whatever works out best for them, they've got a 6-month window where there aren't golfers out there that they can do their work. But we anticipate White Birch starting this fall with the clear.
So from a planning and zoning meeting, we may have a meeting with you guys to look through the rezoning from the R4
R4.
to resort commercial, right?
Yeah.
That's the
small-
only real change for that particular
And
project.
we would have to replat, so
Okay.
kind of all simultaneously. It might even be, depending on what Jerry's thoughts are, we might, in some cases, because it's a simple, we're not creating housing, we're not doing anything crazy, we can do a preliminary and final all at the same time, possibly. And we'll just see how it shakes itself out when we get there, but yeah, we would plat and rezone.
So the lights, downward lights, it's only for the clubhouse and the island, or is it the
No.
whole course?
It's for the whole short course, so the directional lighting, instead of stadium lighting, is so that it's set up to where, just for example, don't hold me to this, but the idea would be behind each of the greens to have a light somewhere that shines solely on that green. So it would be a 20 to 25 foot light that would cover that space, and then the tee boxes would have a 12-foot light over top of it. So we're not trying to light the entire thing, just the playing areas for them. And they're all directionally focused so that there's no scatter effect with it, to where if they're on the outsides, the perimeters, they would be pointed in, and in, all the way around. So anybody who's back here isn't looking into a light that's up, they're looking into a light that's down.
And the thought on that is so you can golf till midnight, or?
No, we don't want to touch that. It's mostly, like during the summer, you could basically play in light until 10 o'clock, 10:30.
Right.
We're trying to just hold on to a little bit of the sunlight, so we anticipate a hard cutoff at 9 o'clock, and what he alluded to before is having the lights shut off behind the last groups, so that people aren't out there and they're not causing any problems after we've closed the whole
That's a
thing.
good idea.
We wanna have control over who that last group is. We know people will wanna play under the lights,
Yeah,
but we want it to be limited, and the main thing for us is when we get to September, due to the cost of lights, when you get to September, we wanna make sure that we don't have to stop the last tee time at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in order to finish before dark. We'd like to, since our season is so short as it is, be able to hold on to at least until 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in September, and let people play as long as they can.
Any other questions? Comments?
So to kind of summarize, stage one per se would be white birch and getting a few more cosmetic changes made. And then in potentially 2026, a planning session to redesign the traditional course. In 2027, March, April, potentially would be when work could be estimated to be completed or worked on. Is that kind of the time frame for the different projects?
To break it down a little bit more to what Andy has said, and again, speaking for him without him here, white birch would probably be mostly worked on the same time as this is being done on both sides, so that the architect team is able to do both of them, that they would clear white birch through this fall and into early next spring. And then about March-ish, according to what he's said right now, not knowing for sure what the weather will give us, they would be over to start moving and doing all of this stuff while finishing up the white birch ones on the other side. White birch would then grow in, same as this would, over there without interfering with the course as it is set up over there while this is being completely built. This would be finished up, grassed and everything, hopefully early August of 2026, allowing for hopefully August, September, and October of growth, as well as March, April of 2027. We're really hoping to open the clubhouse May 1st of 2027, and then open the golf course hopefully by Memorial Day weekend, hopefully, of 2027.
That being said, as far as bringing approvals here, they would probably start occurring, depending on where our planning is, you might be seeing us in November or December, because I think we want to make sure we have everything in play, so that when the season opened for construction, we'd be geared up to go. We wouldn't be waiting or holding us, you and us up from having, hit meeting timelines and so forth, so. It'll be an ongoing planning process, but.
One of the things I wanted to add, because I think this plays into the safety part, but it also plays into the practicality part, is we've got a hole that plays as short as 30 yards, which is barely longer than this room. And then we've got a hole that plays 190 yards, which is our longest. So no one should be hitting driver off of any of the holes. If you are a forward tee player, you don't ever have anything over 150 yards. So it really makes it fair and short for everyone. Again, bringing safety into play. You don't have to worry about people randomly missing theoretically by 100 yards.
So just commenting, it looks like a beautiful design, and I love the fact that you're adding in that environmental aspect to it, in addition to helping homeowners ensure safety of their yards and safety of the people on the course. I mean, I think what you've described here is a beautiful plan. And the renderings for the clubhouse, if that's what you do end up with, look very modern and very cool for the aesthetic.
Am I correct? It looks like you're bringing some of the North Star architecture to this building.
I mean, the Spizos have tied everything in. Everything gets tied in everywhere. It's definitely a tie-in from the same companies that build it, but we want to make it hopefully blend in with what exists there. We want people to drive by and see people teeing off that second level and go, we've never seen anything like this in the world. We do intend to be the first golf course in existence to have people tee off of the clubhouse, which will be pretty special for Minnesota. But yeah, I mean, it's all geared towards safety and, as the architect would say, interaction. As much as we can draw the people who are there who don't golf, who just wanna watch people fail miserably, you know, that's kind of what it's there for, so.
So is there anything that you see as a challenge?
Challenges,
Just overall, anything that you are looking at that if the public were to see this and they say, what do you think a challenge would be, if you have any?
I mean, the only thing I can say is there's a lot of misperception about lights. A lot of people are gonna think, I don't want that shining in my window, you know, but when you think about every residence that's around there, if they could see how it's done, it's literally set up to shine away from all the housing. And I think a lot of times, people are like, well, this is gonna be more of a headache than anything before, but I think it's the exact opposite. It's all controlled, it's not like people can wander around into the dark and still find their golf ball. It's, you know, geared in short segments throughout to where people are just playing from a tee to a green and they're going straight to there. With each green and tee box being lit up solely instead of a stadium light that's trying to light up 4 different greens at the same time, it's not like the baseball, football effect where you're like, gosh, I have to look into this bright, you know, setting of lights. It's individual, you know, shields over each of the greens and tee boxes.
The other thing I see, Marcy, is as you look at the you know, the point going down, right, where the green is at the very end that Roger had mentioned.
17 there?
Yeah, I mean, all those people along there, you know,
Benefit for them.
may have thought that it was, you know, they lived on an active golf course and it won't be active per se, which is a good thing. There's a lot of, you know, in some minds it's a good thing. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have spent some extra money on building fences and things to keep balls from hitting their houses. But at the end of the day, I hope they will see that what they're left with is we're leaving them with sort of this environmental corridor that wouldn't have existed if we had done some other kind of project, maybe planted housing in there, or, you know, left the golf course active, or built the course that's above down below. So it's, you know, they're sort of getting a strip there of land that,
Kind of a buffer.
yeah, a big strip in their neighborhood, so.
And to David's point, because we talked about this quite a bit, you know, a lot of people will buy a house with nothing behind it, with a park behind it, and think, oh, this is great, for the rest of my life I can live with this park behind it.
Yeah.
And then a year later, they build houses behind it. And in that plot right there, there's just not a lot of space for us to do anything else other than to leave it open for everybody.
Is there plans to have like music, you know, like?
Around the clubhouse, so the clubhouse
So
itself,
these neighbors won't have to worry about blaring.
it's piped in throughout where it is, and it's obviously not intended to be blaring because everybody who's there to socialize and hang out wants to be able to hear
Right.
themselves think, so the plans for it have speakers in the walls going around. So
But
they-
none on the fair.
Nothing out on the course.
We'll keep Elvis at dockside. Is there a lighted par 3 locally anyplace?
Locally,
Grant?
the Chaska just built one, the municipal course down there, they just put one in. That's the closest lit par 3 that I'm aware of that everybody can go to. A lot of the private clubs are putting them in, but they, you know, that's what their memberships want. And it's not as big of a thing up here because of the shortened season, which does make this project very unique. Because down in Arizona, they just put one in. Carolinas have them going up, and Florida's got 3 new ones going in, and they're all lighting them. But they get year-round golf,
Sure.
you know, and while that's a benefit to them for the exact flip reason of us, they're trying to play golf when it's cool.
Right.
So to them, they're trying to play in a night to avoid the sun. We're trying to maximize the sun and steal a little bit of light from the night. So.
I was just thinking if we anticipate lighting is gonna be controversial, it would be kinda nice if we could
Yeah. I can say that the courses that have done it, you know, whatever opposition they faced prior to putting it in, found out that it was much less disturbing that way, you know, after it was put in, due to the technology that exists right now with the LED lighting, you know, being able to make it directional and actually tilt the things and all the focus to be in a specific area takes away all the concern from, you know, what a lot of people think is going to be something right in their face. And again, this plot of land was specifically chosen, if you talk to the architects, they all wanted the southern part of land, because there was more movement down here. But also, if you do it down there, putting up lighting and keeping it out of people's faces is much more difficult. Doing it up in the north, we've got the little cabins that are along the top, but all the lighting faces away from them. And on the side, over on the east side, there's nothing, you know, so facing in, we're fine. And on the west side is the highway, and we're across the highway facing in. So we feel like we picked the one piece of land where we won't, you know, be in people's faces with anything.
And the parking lot lighting will be some distance from,
And it will be like corner lighting. If you were to go out to Deacons and see how they do it, it's like your four corners pointing in. So again, it's to light the spot, not to light outside the spot.
And the clinic is another one, they just did some interior center ones and that was it. So it'll just depend, but yeah, the parking lot won't be lit towards intruding on somebody's
bedroom.
bedroom.
We put a lot of effort, I should say David put a lot of effort into making sure that we kept it as north as we could to,
Right.
you know, to alleviate some of that
Right.
from the others. And also if you look at the lines that we did on our more detailed one, every single parking spot where people pull in and park is, you know, kind of set up to where nobody's parking with their lights pointing right in your window, you know?
That parking lot's gonna need a lot of dirt movement the way it looks, huh?
Fortunately, that's where we're sourcing all of our dirt for the course up there, because the sand there is so pure
Oh,
that we can move that sand up where we want. It's all gonna be reshaped as is, which allows us to put the drainage basins wherever we want them to be in order for it to be most efficient.
Does anyone have any more questions? No? Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate this. This was a nice presentation, but also just great that you took the time to come here and share with us. So thank you, David. Thank you, Eric, for giving us that preview and taking that time to share with not only us, but the public that is also watching this, because I think that is a proactive move to alleviate concerns, questions, or things that are coming up. So thank you.
Well, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen. You know, thank you. All right.
some questions for me.
All right, well, we will move on. Thank you so much.
And if, you know, if something comes up or if there's a question or concern, reach out to, you know, Eric or myself, and we'll try to get answers and address them.
All right, well, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the discussion of the subdivision of consolidated lots 8 and 9, Block 4, White Birch 4, located at 7602 Black Hawk Circle in zoning R1. So Jerry, would you like to begin?
Probably. This is a request that I actually initially came before me about 3 or 4 years ago. And when I looked at the ordinance, I basically said, I don't think it can be done. Then it's back in front of me, and the homeowner is insistent that he should be able to do that, and I think he's got some advice from one of the local realtors that says he should be able to do that. That said, little background, the gentleman has 2 lots on Blackhawk Circle. They were consolidated. I don't know whether they were consolidated before the house was built or after, but the initial house that was built is built over the property line, or between the 2 lots. That if in fact that house would have been built on the original lot and been away from the lot line and conformed to setbacks, we probably would have allowed them to unconsolidate the lots, but that complicates the issue. The other part of the issue, there's actually another couple of parts to the issue, is that the subdivision regulations, when that subdivision was done for that zoning, required a 40,000 square foot lot size. Today, under our existing regulations in the R1 zone, a new subdivision, the minimum lot size is 2.5 acres. The question becomes, can you allow a re-subdivision for something that doesn't conform to the subdivision ordinance, but would have conformed to an old rule of regulation? The next part of that is that there's also on the property, the consolidated 2 lots on the far, I think it would be the east side of that second lot, there's a guest house and a garage. If in fact that were sitting on a new lot, it would be considered a non-conforming use because it doesn't conform to the minimum sizes required for a dwelling unit. I have some correspondence between myself and the city attorney that I've provided to you for your review. Number one, I don't expect you to give me an answer this evening. I give it to you to ponder the ins and outs of it. I think the gentleman is going to come. I haven't shared this correspondence with him, but I will share this correspondence between myself and the attorney with him. I still think he's going to be adamant that he should be in front of the planning commission to do a new subdivision or re-subdivide the consolidated lots. That said, I wanted to orientate you toward the issue so that you don't get it blindsided all at one time. And if you got any concerns or questions, I'll try and answer them.
So I tried to wrap my head around this, and I'm going to surmise what I think is happening and tell me if I'm on the right track here. So current regulation in here would say that if we were to do a subdivision, it'd require 2.5 acres lot size, which is not the case. So if we're following what we currently have, we would not allow that.
Right.
If we did say, well, you know what, he bought the lot a long time ago, we're going to grandfather that in if that was our thought process. Then the next issue becomes that the house, if there was a lot line put in there according to what the original one is, it looks like the house was built over the lot line. So there would be an issue with where does the lot line go? How does it get determined? And then if we do get through that process, then we're creating an issue with it not being, the current structure not meeting current standards. So then we're going to need a variance to say do we allow this new plot to be able to be a variance created by the plight of the property owner because they're already built a structure on the site that would not be conforming. So to me, it just kind of seems like the further we go down here, we just keep running into issue after issue.
Block's gonna, yeah.
I mean, the base point would be, do we follow current regulation, which requires a 2.5 acre lot to do a subdivision? I guess in my head, because the request is coming in now, not when they originally bought the lot, we would follow what's on the current books, which would require a 2.5 acre lot. That's just, is there anything that would indicate why we would go back and say we would base it off of when they purchased the lot, what the regulations were at that time, or the lot size was at that time for a subdivision?
If that were the case, and you were to take that a step further, then anybody
Right.
Could say that.
could say that the rule was, in 1920, the rule was this, so I should be able to do that.
Right.
I think that makes some bad policy decisions, quite frankly. That said, I do sympathize because he's got a big enough piece of property that he can probably create another 40,000 square foot lot and meet the setback requirements, but he can't create that new property with a conforming structure because of the pre-existing structure. The other thing that, taking it a step further, if in fact you said, okay, we'll allow that because the rule at that time, these lots are big enough, the 40,000 square foot lots are big enough. What's to say that Roger has a vacant lot next to him, his house, and he consolidates that lot, and he's made a deal with Joe, who wants a toy box. And Roger builds the toy box on that other lot, then comes back in and says, well, I want to sell this. And I'm going to sell it to Joe. And now we have a situation where you're allowing an accessory structure without having a principal structure. I think it could create some problems down the line.
I see it too. I mean, there's several
It
cases
snowballs.
like that around here that could,
Oh, somebody using, if I can think about that, I think somebody else can too.
oh yes.
Well, and I go back to it, like if let's say we get down that far, now we're saying we're creating a problem that didn't exist by having a non-conforming structure on a subdivided lot that we said they could subdivide. And now we've just said, hey, we're going to allow a non-conforming structure that doesn't meet up to current standards. And then if we were to try to justify that, when I'm looking through the reasons why we would justify having a variance on that, it would be making sure it's not for economic reasons alone, making sure it's not due to the plight of the property owner, that it's due to, and I look at that and go, well, we're creating it, so it is due to the plight of the property owner. And I'm not sure what the reasons would be for this, but an assumption might be that it is for economic reasons if they're planning to sell it, which would make sense of why they would want to subdivide is to sell it. So then I go down that route and I think, well, then we wouldn't approve that in a normal condition because that would not meet the criteria. So I'm struggling to get to anything that says this makes sense from our criteria for evaluating approval on it.
Correct. I mean, there's three, close to the lot line, non-conforming, there's several.
And it's not current standards
to begin Right.
The one thing I could say is that you will be looking at another ordinance coming up. We will get back at that again. I would assume within the next couple months, we're going to be starting that process over again or just re-upping it. That said, you may be looking at smaller lot sizes than you have today. I think you need to have that conversation, whether the 2.5 acre lot size is real. Or should we be going to something smaller, or should we be going to even something larger? I don't think the soils here, I think the soils here justify smaller lot size, which I think is easier to maintain, to take care of, and especially when it comes to special assessments for roads and things like that, and making those improvements, it becomes pretty cumbersome to have a 2.5 acre lot with 500 feet of frontage.
I can see what you're saying, but how would you would have to go,
Right.
yeah, I mean, it would be a very odd to make setbacks and,
Well, I think there's, and I haven't seen a survey, and I don't think he's done a survey yet.
Okay.
But he knows that if he's
But we
going to make
still
the
have-
request, he's going to have to do that. I think there's a way you can make it
make it work.
work. That said, it's just kind of gerrymandering
Right.
to get to that point.
'Cause
If in fact the house would have been built to setbacks on the original lot, I think it becomes a less cumbersome issue than it is today.
Right, but we still have the issue of this,
Still have the issue of the non-conforming structure.
Right.
That said, if you wanted to really get into it and say, okay, I'll make that a conforming structure and I'll put the addition on it, maybe that works, I don't know.
And that could be something the property owner would look at, or if, as we do a review of everything, if lot sizes do change, then it might be time to then revisit.
And I've had that conversation with the gentleman about the fact that second structure would be non-conforming. He said, well, I'll let that up to the next guy. But
It makes no sense to me that action of a planning commission creates a non-conforming structure.
you would hope that you don't. I think there's instances where the city has, by initiating zoning, has created non-conforming structures, but it's not one specific
Right.
structure. It is a policy-wide decision. And
Right.
you see a lot of that on the Lake Shore and stuff. But
That's a whole different.
it's a different ballgame. It's easy for the general public to argue, well, it's the same as mine, but it really isn't.
So is there anything more that you want us to do today, or just kind of review this and be prepared should this come in front of us?
I want you to review it and be prepared to, if the gentleman does come forward, and I will share the emails that I have with the attorney.
I did read most of the attorney stuff and kind of went, it was written by an attorney.
Well, I needed to start somewhere, so.
Yeah, that's good.
And a lot of times when you're dealing with folks, they don't accept my interpretation without having somebody else's thing. And I also needed, from my perspective, to know that
All right.
I'm on
You
the
were
right track.
you were thinking, all right,
Yeah, exactly. But that was,
Yes.
Am I correct that this decision is the city council's? We would make a recommendation?
you would have to, if in fact you were to allow a subdivision, you would make a recommendation to approve a subdivision or deny a subdivision. And that decision would go to the city council. Now, if there was a variance for something, such as the size of that
Setback.
non-conforming structure, you would have the final authority on that variance. You have final authorities on variances and conditional uses. Anything else is basically a recommendation that goes to the city council.
But wouldn't we need to approve the variance first before recommending to city council, since we're creating the need for the variance by suggesting it?
Well, I think
That's interesting,
Number one,
yeah.
I think you have to deal with the subdivision first. And if the council goes along with that subdivision, recognizing that there's a non-conforming structure there, then I think you would have to come back with the variance.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can do them one or the, I think you have to do the subdivision first. Because without the subdivision, you don't really know how big that lot is and those type of things.
Well, then you'd have to request a survey, correct?
Absolutely.
Right. Because he can't come in with just a little pencil drawing and say,
Well, I think
I
that's
suppose
what,
he could.
I think that's what most would attempt.
yeah,
I believe he knows that he would have to do a survey. Again, it may or may come in front of you, I don't know for sure, but I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Okay, well, moving on to number 8, other, I see that we have some additional information here on pods.
Yeah, and this again is also something that, again, it was a gentleman that came to me and he was adamant that he needed to put a container structure on his property so he could clean it up. I somewhat sympathize with him, but we have an ordinance that doesn't allow those container structures. And the question that I would have to the planning commission is there any inclination that you would consider making a recommendation to change the ordinance on those structures?
Jerry, I thought the ordinance allowed it for a period of time.
For a period of time or during construction?
Right.
well, this one, it sounds like he wants it permanent.
Yeah, well,
Well,
You
That's-
can buy those pods or containers cheap, so you know
about
what?
$3,000.
Yeah, so you know they're gonna be dropping those things over like yo-yos all over.
And I know that there's some in the community.
Yeah,
They've come in the late night. We haven't received any complaints about them, so we haven't done anything with them.
So this is more for us to just, at this point, kind of review if we think this is still appropriate, or if we would consider
Yeah.
his request to make it permanent, to actually have this as like a storage unit on the property.
Yeah, it's an accessory
Yes, sir.
structure.
kind of a little storage shed, but bigger,
Yeah.
right? I mean, technically, if you bring in a, what is it, 8 by
10
12?
10 by 12 or less.
10 by 12, you
But
can, no problem.
But it has to match the look and feel of the existing structure. There's conditions on it, so it doesn't look like a,
There is
Yeah.
nothing like that.
doesn't it say similar siding and shingles and everything?
It just says it's 10 by 12, right?
10 by 12 is a shed.
All right,
It's a definition of a shed. The only distinction with the shed is that you can put them closer to the property lines than you can something bigger than that.
right. 5 feet from the property line
3
or
feet.
something? Is it 3 feet?
Yes,
And then 20 feet from the lake or something, if I recall?
that's a, what do they call it? Water-orientated accessory structure. That one is 20 feet from the OHW and 10 feet from the property line, even if it's, and that's 10 by 12.
Yeah.
I think the storage had a
This may not be the right way to think on these containers, but if they're not any bigger than 10 by 12,
Well,
but then
the ordinance says the containers, it addresses the containers. It doesn't address
right,
10 by 12s
all right,
sheds.
Says
No containers, yeah.
with the exception of area.
During construction or moving or whatever, you can get a temporary permit to do that. Problem is, sometimes they turn into permanent structures.
The one I'm thinking about has.
I think I know where that one is too.
I would pass it on my walk,
Yes.
okay?
There's one on, you must drive by every day, coming on 11 with
Oh,
the campers.
that would be she's in the park board.
And they just keep adding, so. No comment.
So that's something. So that's something for us to review and potentially bring up at a future meeting.
I don't know if it's gonna
Right.
get any further than this. I plan to give this letter and the ordinance to the council and see if there's any wish to change something. I would assume that the council would say, well, let's look at that as part of the ordinance. And if there's some reason to do it, but I don't think I don't know where they would come with it, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think a good time when we're reviewing everything, that'd probably be a good time. It's nice to know that that's coming up, so it's something to
Well,
be aware.
in all reality, if in fact you bring it up through that review process, we looked at it and we decided that what we have is good or what we have needs to be changed.
I know you see them for sale a lot, so.
They're a cheaper alternative
Oh, yeah.
than Old Hickory. Per square foot, they're much cheaper than Old Hickory. They're mouse-proof, they're waterproof, they have a lot of advantages. They just may not be the most aesthetic thing in the world.
Is that me?
It doesn't add to our up north.
Look, yeah, that's true.
Doesn't go with our comprehensive plan.
Other than that, I
All right.
have nothing.
Okay, no other staff reports, commissioner reports?
Other than what I had brought up to Jerry when I first got here, so.
Yeah, and I'm glad I didn't put it in this packet, but I do have some information for you folks on variances and
Okay.
I will let you look at that.
Madam Chair, could I just ask quickly for a report on filling staff positions?
Oh, sure. Our new administrator starts on July 1. She's excited. I think the staff is excited to have this gal come.
Where's she from?
Her name is Allie Polfus. Polfus, I think, is how you pronounce the last name. She's currently the assistant administrator in Minnetrista. Prior to being in Minnetrista, she was an assistant in Savage. And prior to that, she was in, I believe, Eagle Lake, which is a little town outside of Mankato. It's kind of the proving grounds for folks that go through the Mankato process, and they get Eagle Lake and Madison Lake kind of get their first choice, per se. There's some of the council have indicated that they want me to stick around for a while yet, after she comes.
Probably a good idea.
I would assume that I'm probably gonna stick around and help in this capacity. I don't know what else she is going to want. I have done these interim stints where I stuck around for a couple months because there were things to do and it wasn't just looking over somebody's shoulder. And I really don't want to do that. And I've done these interim stints where the new person walks in the door and I walked out. So, and we've never talked before, again. And I say that facetiously, but it depends on the person, what kind of activities and what that person is comfortable with. She may not even be comfortable with me having me around, I don't know. But we'll work on that. We've hesitated to hire somebody in the planning part of it because we thought the administrator should have a say in who that team is. And I agree with that.
And that's still the plan.
Yeah. I think we've got some other staffing issues to talk about too that are outside of the planning area, but that will happen. A lot of it's going to depend on next year's budget, which might be tough. FYI, I think we're getting ready to move into the new offices.
So next meeting will be over there?
No.
No?
I said the offices, Roger. I said the offices. The council chambers,
Yeah.
that's probably September.
Oh,
That really hasn't, they've gutted it. That's about all that's really been done there, other than some electrical stuff. There's something about having to make the changeover from the new building to the old and cutting off the old building from the electrical services that didn't allow that transition to happen. I didn't realize that until 2 weeks ago.
I would think
Until
they
the
could work
electrician told
over.
me that there was a problem with that, so that's,
I got a son that's an electrician, and they work weekends sometimes to do, and nights to do
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. You know, schools and so forth.
there was something about the transition between the old and the new and having to cut one off and power a new one. And actually, the new one is pretty well powered, though. They have real lights in it now, and they go on as you walk in, and when nobody's around, they go off. And
You have automatic locking doors too, right?
we will
Yeah,
we
yeah.
will have a card reading system for the security. There'll be cameras for security. If you went over there right now, you'd see all kinds of furniture being assembled. And it's starting to look like something. The carpet's down, the ceiling's in, and lights are on. And
The exterior looks very nice.
Yeah,
yeah, it is.
Very,
Nice
It's-
enough
it-
that one of my clients called to tell me that they called the city to get the, people like,
get the color.
they like the look. They like
Yeah.
The interesting thing about that's really basically press board. That's got a baked on finish on the outside.
That's just that LP diamond coat, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I'm putting some on tomorrow.
Yeah, it does look nice. It doesn't look like much until the battens go on, but
Yeah.
with the battens, it really helps.
and it's not log.
Pardon?
We've got enough log siding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, the woodpeckers need something.
yeah, tell me about it.
very cool.
So that's what I know. I think September is probably a realistic date for the council chambers.
That'll work.
Any other questions?
Is there anything that can be done in terms of moving the planner position along before she arrives, recruitment, collection of resumes?
I really doubt it.
Okay. Let her be involved in that.
Exactly.
Designing that project.
There's going to be a time when she's going to need to get familiar with what's here
Yeah,
and what's necessary, quite frankly.
Well, she's
I know if
coming
I were
from
stepping into that
Minnetrista.
position, I
Wow.
would want that.
Yes.
I appreciate the want to speed it up, but I think sometimes when you make snap decisions, you make the wrong decision. And, you know, and she may have some capabilities that, and some weaknesses that she wants to supplement, or you know, maybe she wants to take more of that role, and
Maybe she'll bring
Give
a
something
person
else.
with. I mean, I think that happened before, didn't it?
well, I think you see that with coaches of professional
Yeah.
football teams and basketball teams. I don't know that you see that with city administrators, quite frankly. Typically, there isn't a budget to do that.
She may have some strong feelings about a hiring process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be her team, so she needs to have a say in that.
Does she live up here or will?
My understanding is that she
Not that
has
it matters.
has something to do with a cabin over towards Aiken, but I don't know exactly where it is. And she has not told me that. I've heard that from somebody else. So, yeah, she's excited. Again, I think the staff is excited, and
May I ask, was she the first choice?
yes,
That's a good sign.
I think she was
Might be a good-
unanimous first choice.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of discrepancy at all, quite frankly. I think she did, I can honestly say she did her homework. I think even Deb would agree with that.
But she wasn't one of the first three, because they had three and they, yeah, that's what I thought.
There were three candidates that were interviewed a
All
couple
right.
months prior to
Her.
that were not chosen.
All right,
And the second round, we had actually three very good candidates. Any one of the three could have done the job.
All right, well, we can wrap this up. Thank you all, and meeting is adjourned.